So coming back to Spain, I know that Spain has 6 of the largest construction companies in the world. So there's some secret sauce, Ambassador, that you have. But how is it possible for Barcelona city, for instance, or Madrid, to do whatever Mr. Amitabh Kant mentioned? A, good transport, public transport, good planning, capturing the externalities of land value increase. How are you doing it?
How do you make the life of the people that live in 12th century, 11th century neighborhoods a pleasant and meaningful life, that they have all the services that their counterparts in the newer parts of the city actually have? Well, that is, of course, there are things that they will not be able to do. In some cities in Spain, you will not be able to go with a car into the city center. It wouldn't be able to happen either in Old Delhi. But when you see Old Delhi, and people say this is never going to be able to become a smart city, and they're wrong. Actually, that is perfectly possible. Many cities in Spain are absolutely 21st century cities, and you have very, very narrow streets that are perfectly preserved, that have been absolutely refurbished and upgraded. For example, there are some of the world's most important schools of architecture have been looking into tying up with some of the most important cities in India. The University of Virginia, that has a very prestigious school of architecture, has done that with New Delhi. And the dean of that school is a Spanish architect called Iñaki Alday. So he came to India on his penny and partly on the penny of his school, and has been doing some urban redesign of the banks of the Yamuna River. Because if you want to recover a river, it's not just the river bank, and it's not just the body of water that flows through it. It is definitely and above all the banks. And it is reintegrating wasteland into the city and transforming, for example, dirty industry into something that is going to be meaningful and safe for the city. This is exactly what happened in Bilbao, which is in the region of the country that I come from, in Spain, in the north. Bilbao was a very rich and very ugly, dirty, unhealthy city until very recently, and it got absolutely transformed. You go now to the riverbanks of the Nervión, which is the river that goes through Bilbao, and you will not believe it. It is one of the most beautiful cities, and actually by the European Commission was rated as the smartest city in Europe right now, and that is because you have to recover your city center. You have to refurbish, you have to upgrade it, and by doing that, you're adding value to the city, and you are actually, for example, introducing services that, of course, were not foreseen by the city planners in the 12th, 13th, 14th century.
I think the one thing that's emerging is city leadership has to be high quality. I think probably Barcelona or Madrid or Bilbao would have had their local champions, not governed from the national capital, but from the city, making things happen, moving the needle, which is what you're saying. In the US, Mayor Randall of Philadelphia turned that city around. And he was so successful that he went on to become governor and was likely to contest. Why is this not happening in India, Bhardwaj?
I think the systems are there. You know, a lot of these countries, in terms of their, not Spain, but in the US, the cities are very old. I mean, it's the local governments which came before the state and the national government. So you have a history there which is different from ours. All the cities which are doing well have laid down a grid, and I don't mean a crisscross grid, but the transportation grid, and have protected it for the last 100 years. The grid of New York, it is a grid, but the road network was laid out long before the actual development went there. Yeah. And so, and this means that you have to have the foresight and then continuous upgrading. The Regional Planning Association of New York is one of the oldest non-statutory. So we had taken a whole group of people from India to the Regional Planning Association of New York, and they kept asking, so under which act do you work? And those guys didn't have a clue what they were asking, because this was a voluntary organization in a sense. A group of people have come together over the last 100 years and who meet and who decide on what the future of the city will be in terms of the plan. I believe that this realization is beginning in India. The fact that metropolitan areas, now, as you know, we have been looking at the night lights data, the data that is coming from a satellite which is giving very precise on a daily basis and then averaging it over a year, over the years, the night lights. And we are seeing a correlationship between the intensity of night lights and the local GDP. And we are seeing in India corridors that are developing outside of any planner's view. So you have, I'll give you a small example in Maharashtra, Sangli, Kupwad. Who knows those words? Or who knows those cities? But those cities are actually becoming one city. But who is planning? Nobody is planning for this. And that's the problem. Amitabh Kant started the planning of the Delhi-Mumbai corridor, and there are other corridors that are coming up. But there are other pockets all over the country where all of this development is happening without any grid, without any attention to this. And that is what needs to be done.
So what we are really trying to say, dear audience, is smart cities are not possible without smart leaders. And in India, what seems to be happening is that there are hardly any smart leaders at the city level. All the smart leaders are either at the union government level or at the state government level. Karuna talked about Hyderabad. Who's the smart leader in Vijayawada? In Kerala, who's the smart leader in Kochi? It's all driven by the state capital. So, to change the format a bit, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.